Welcome everybody. This is the private pilot oral exam study guide. Question number 1. What certificates and documents must be on board the aircraft for it to be considered legal? Remember ARROW, ARROW, airworthiness certificate, registration, radio station license if you're flying outside the U.S., operating limitations, and weight and balance. Number 2, what are the items required to be carried with you in order to act as pilot in command? To act as pilot in command of an aircraft, you are required to carry your pilot's certificate, a valid medical certificate, and a government-issued photo ID. Number 3, what are the limitations regarding flying for hire for a private pilot? A private pilot cannot act as pilot in command of an aircraft that is carrying passengers or property for compensation or hire. A private pilot must pay at least an equal pro rata share of operating expenses of a flight carrying passengers. Number 4, how long is a third class medical certificate valid, a second class, and a first class? A third class medical certificate is valid until the end of the 60th calendar month following the date of the examination if you were under 40 years of age on the day of the medical exam. If you were 40 years old or older on the day of the exam, then the certificate is valid until the end of the 24th calendar month following the date of the exam. A second-class medical certificate is valid for operations requiring a commercial pilot certificate for 12 months following the date of the exam, regardless of age. A first-class medical certificate is valid for operations requiring an airline transport pilot certificate for 6 months, or for operations requiring a commercial pilot certificate for 12 months following the date of the exam, regardless of age. Number 5. What class medical certificate must you have to apply for a certificate or rating? To apply for a certificate or rating, you are required to have a third class medical certificate. Number 6. What is required to act as pilot in command of a complex, high performance, or tail wheel airplane? To act as pilot in command of a complex, high performance, or tail wheel airplane, you are required to receive and log ground and flight training and obtain a logbook endorsement from an appropriately rated CFI. Number 7. What is required to act as pilot in command of a turbojet powered aircraft or one with a gross weight over 12,500 pounds? To act as pilot in command of a turbojet powered aircraft or one with a gross weight of over 12,500 pounds, you are required to have a type rating. 8. What is a flight review? Within what time period must a flight review have been satisfactorily completed in order to act as pilot in command? A flight review is a minimum of 1 hour of ground training and 1 hour of flight training that must have been completed within the preceding 24 calendar months for you to be able to act as pilot in command. Alternatively, you may have passed a pilot proficiency check conducted by an examiner or inspector, a company check airman, or a U.S. Armed Force for pilot certificate rating or operating privilege within the preceding 24 calendar months. Number 9. What must be done to remain current to act as pilot in command of an aircraft carrying passengers? To act as pilot in command of an aircraft carrying passengers, you must complete 3 takeoffs and landings to a full stop in a tailwheel airplane every 90 days, and complete a flight review every 24 calendar months. To carry passengers at night, you must complete 3 landings to a full stop at night every 90 days. Number 10. Define category, class, and type. Category is the broad classification of aircraft that includes airplane, glider, rotorcraft, and lighter than air. Class refers to aircraft having similar operating characteristics such as single engine, multi-engine, land, and sea. Type refers to a specific make and model of aircraft. Number 11. What flight experience must be entered into a pilot logbook? The only flight experience that is required to be entered into a pilot logbook is that experience which is required for obtaining a certificate or rating, completing a flight review, or meeting recency of experience requirements. Number 12. What type of airframe inspection is an aircraft required to have undergone to be considered airworthy? An aircraft must have undergone an annual inspection within the preceding 12 calendar months to be considered airworthy, if it is used for non-commercial operations. If an aircraft is used for commercial operations, it is also required to have been through an inspection within the preceding 100 hours. Number 13. Is an airplane owner who is not an A&P mechanic allowed to perform any type of maintenance on his or her airplane? Yes. An airplane owner who is not a certified mechanic is allowed to perform preventative maintenance such as oil changes. Number 14. How often must a transponder be tested and inspected to be considered airworthy? You may not operate a transponder unless it has been inspected and tested within the preceding 24 calendar months. Number 15. What is an STC? When is an STC required? An STC is a supplemental type certificate. An STC is required whenever there is a major change or modification made to the airplane that doesn't warrant a new type certificate. Number 16. Who is responsible for keeping the airplane in an airworthy condition? The owner or operator is responsible for making sure the airplane is kept in an airworthy condition. Number 17. What is an airworthiness directive? Why are they issued? An airworthiness directive is issued by the FAA when there is a safety issue with a particular type of aircraft. ADs are mandatory and must be complied with within a certain time frame unless the AD specifically indicates otherwise. Number 18. What type of maintenance records is the owner required to keep for an aircraft? Maintenance records must be kept for the current status of life-limited parts, the propeller, engine, etc., the current status of all ADs, and any preventative maintenance done by the pilot. Number 19. What are the minimum fuel requirements for flight in VFR conditions? During the day, the FARs require that the aircraft possess sufficient fuel to fly to the first point of intended landing and then for an additional 30 minutes, assuming normal cruise. At night, the aircraft must possess fuel sufficient to fly for an additional 45 minutes. Number 20. What instruments and equipment are required for day VFR flights? Tachometer, map gauge, if equipped, oil pressure gauge, oil temperature gauge, fuel gauge, altimeter, airspeed indicator, magnetic direction indicator, anti-collision light, ELT, seatbelts, flotation gear if over water, and landing gear indicator lights if equipped. Number 21. What instruments and equipment are required for night VFR flights? All-day VFR equipment plus fuses, one spare set or 3 of each kind, landing light if operating for hire, anti-collision light system, position lights, navigational lights, and a source of electrical energy like a battery. Number 22. Must you notify the FAA of a change of address? Yes. If your address changes, you must notify the FAA in writing within 30 days, or you may not exercise the privileges of your pilot certificate. Number 23. Define the responsibility and authority of the pilot in command. The pilot in command is the final authority as to the operation of the aircraft. He or she is responsible for the safety of the crew and all passengers on board the aircraft. Number 24. How long must one wait after consuming alcohol before acting as a required crew member on a civil airplane. You must wait 8 hours after consuming alcohol before acting as a required crew member on a civil airplane. 25. What is the maximum allowable blood alcohol content while acting as a required crew member on a civil airplane? You may not act as a required crew member on a civil aircraft while having 0.04% by weight or more blood alcohol content. 26. Above what altitude must all passengers be provided with supplemental oxygen? All passengers must be provided with supplemental oxygen when the cabin altitude is above 15,000 feet MSL. The required flight crew must be provided with and use supplemental oxygen for all times in excess of 30 minutes spent above 12,500 feet MSL and for the entire time spent above 14,000 feet MSL. 27. Within what time frame must an accident report be filed with the National Transportation Safety Board? You are required to notify the NTSB immediately when an aircraft accident, an occurrence that results in death or serious injury to any person, or substantial damage to the aircraft occurs. A report must be filed within 10 days after an accident. Number 28. Is damage to the landing gear or tire considered substantial damage by the NTSB? Damage to a tire or landing gear is not considered substantial damage, and a report to the NTSB is not required. A definition of exactly what is and is not considered substantial damage is found in NTSB Part 830. 29. Which occurrences require immediate notification to the NTSB? You must immediately notify the NTSB when an aircraft accident or any of the following incidents occur: the inability of a required crew member to perform his or her duties, an in-flight fire, a flight control system malfunction, a mid-air collision, failure of the structural components of a turbine engine, excluding compressor and turbine blades and vanes, damage to property other than the aircraft in excess of $25,000, or when an aircraft is overdue and is believed to have been involved in an accident. Number 30. How is a quote-unquote serious injury defined by the NTSB? A serious injury is defined by NTSB Part 830 as an injury requiring hospitalization for more than 48 hours, most bone fractures, muscle or nerve damage, internal organ damage, second or third degree burns, or any burns affecting over 5% of the body. 31. When are safety belts required to be worn by all occupants? Safety belts and shoulder harnesses, if installed, are required to be worn by all occupants during taxi, takeoff, and landing. 32. As pilot, what is your responsibility to your passengers with regards to safety belts? As pilot in command, you must brief your passengers on the operation of the safety belts and notify your passengers when belts must be worn. 33. What is a NASA Aviation Safety Reporting Program, ASRP report, and when should one be filed? The NASA ASRP is a voluntary program designed to gather information about deficiencies in the aviation system. When an FAR is violated inadvertently without involving a criminal offense, filing an NASA ASRP report within 10 days may prevent an enforcement action.